give us every single day. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
You may be seated. Did you say that too? Yeah. Nice. Well, there we go. We're on the same page. Back in September, my daughter officially began kindergarten at Crystal Lake Elementary right up the road here. And to say that she was excited is a gross understatement, because this girl would not stop talking, and there was endless amounts of energy and endless questions, and we could not wait to send her to school. We love her so much, but it was time. Now, this is a picture of my daughter who, it's her birthday today, and she is now 6, and so this is a picture of the first day of school when she was out in front of our house waiting for the bus. And that face just says it all. I mean, that is like pure excitement and joy, and she cannot wait. And I am happy to say that Brooke still loves school. And so we are super wanting that to continue, although that may not continue. I mean, she's so excited that when school is canceled, she gets upset. Did you hear what I said? Gets upset when school is canceled. I don't know whose kid that is. But anyway, we love her enthusiasm for school, and we love Crystal Lake Elementary, great school. And what we love about her school is they make her zest and her love of learning just continue to increase. She loves to learn. And just recently, Brooke's school hosted what was called a theme week. And a theme week is essentially an entire week devoted to a special topic. And that topic is then integrated into all sorts of classroom activities and all sorts of school-wide activities for 5 straight days. And so a few weeks ago the topic was Dr. Seuss and all of his incredibly creative stories. And so, of course, when Brooke came home from school, we had to watch the movie adaptation of Horton Hears a Who. How many of you are Horton Hears a Who fans? Say that 8 times fast, and it gets fun. One of the things I absolutely love about Dr. Seuss is that on one level, his books are mainly written for children. However, at another level, many of his books and stories are very, very prophetic. And when I say prophetic, I mean they speak to and they challenge widely held cultural beliefs that need to be challenged. And Horton Hears a Who is definitely one of those prophetic works. Now, if you're not familiar, the main thrust of the story involves a very lovable character, a very lovable, playful elephant named Horton. And Horton comes across what seems to be an ordinary speck of dust in the jungle of Newell, okay? And when he comes across this ordinary speck of dust, he finds out that it's not just ordinary. It is actually a tiny planet of sorts that is home to Whoville, that is loaded with microscopic creatures called Whos. When Horton discovers that this community of Whos exists, he makes it his mission to protect them. Everywhere he goes, he takes this speck of dust because he wants to protect them and make sure that they can continue to live their lives as normal. Now, as the story progresses, the tension builds, and the tension builds because all these other animals begin to go at Horton and say that he's insane. They begin to ridicule Horton for believing in something they cannot see or hear themselves. They begin to go at him. Now, it gets even more interesting when there is a kangaroo that comes on the scene. And the kangaroo is like the self-appointed gatekeeper. She's like the protector of the society. And she's incredibly mean to Horton. She's conniving. She's the main villain. She is very critical of him. She thinks he's insane, but she takes it one step further. She begins to tell the others in the jungle that he is a danger to their society and that they need to keep their kids away from him. At a very pivotal point in the story, the kangaroo, who is steaming with anger, says to Horton, "If you can't see, hear, or feel something, it doesn't exist. And believing in tiny imaginary people is just not something we do or tolerate here in the jungle of Newell." That is a very fascinating statement, isn't it? That is a fascinating statement because that line represents a belief, a worldview that is embedded into our world. And some of us, lots of us, have either been raised with that worldview or we have come in contact with that worldview a lot. It's a worldview that casts all sorts of doubt and disbelief on that thing we should maybe call the spiritual. And yet there is this thing within people, many people, and it's continuing to rise, even people outside the realm of the church, who are saying things like, there is more to this reality than what can be seen or heard or felt. Now, and here's a who, Dr. Seuss challenges that worldview. Do you see that? And not only does Dr. Seuss challenge it, but the scriptures challenge it in an indirect way. The scriptures, which are essentially this grand story of God with the main character, they pull back the curtain on what we believe to be reality. And they show us what reality is in its fullest. They show us the surface, but they also show us what is underneath, beyond the surface. Essentially, to put it another way, they show us what's on stage, but they also show us what is happening behind the scenes. And what's behind the scenes is just as important as what is happening on stage. When Jesus begins his ministry as a first century Jewish rabbi in the first century Jewish world, it doesn't take long to notice that there are things at work behind the scenes that are affecting the things that are at the surface. Now, some people would call these things spiritual forces. Some people would call these things powers. Some people would call these things angelic or demonic. But regardless of the wording we want to use, and regardless of our modern worldview, which wants to kind of push those things to the realm of fantasy and myth, one of the things we cannot deny is just as there is good at work in the world, there is also evil at work in the world. And as soon as we acknowledge that reality, we begin to read the scriptures in a different light. We begin to see that everywhere Jesus goes, he is coming face to face with that. And when we dig deeper, we begin to see that Jesus isn't just addressing what's on the surface. He is addressing and focusing and pulling the curtain back and defeating all the evil behind the scenes that is tearing at the human heart. Your heart and my heart. I am a big fan of history. Do we have any history buffs in the house? When I say history buff, I mean like you're watching Jeopardy and you know obscure answers to obscure questions and you drive your spouse nuts. Yes, that would be myself. And one of the things I have always loved reading about is the history of the world wars. Now, I've done my fair share of reading about the world wars, especially World War II. What I have found to be the most intriguing event is that day called D-Day, the day when American soldiers and Allied forces landed on the beaches of France in one of the largest military invasions the world has ever seen. And what's tragic is that thousands upon thousands of soldiers from both sides lost their lives. And when it came to the American and Allied forces, the devastation was catastrophic. Because as soon as the forces landed, they were under an onslaught of German gunfire. I mean, the moment they stepped on the beach, there wasn't even a chance to take a breath. About 40 or so years after D-Day, one of the war's most esteemed generals, Omar Bradley, said this about the landing at Omaha Beach. Omaha Beach being one of the several beaches that soldiers landed at. He said this, "Omaha Beach was a nightmare." In our story, Jesus and his 12 young disciples, they make their way across the Sea of Galilee to a region called the Gerasenes. And the very moment they land, the very moment they secure the boat and then step out of it, the nightmare comes running at them. A man who is clearly not in his right mind, who has chains probably dangling from his arms and even from his legs. He has cuts all over his body. A man who has been ostracized and made to live among the tombs of the dead. That man sees Jesus at a distance, and then he takes off running full bore at him. Now imagine the confusion in the disciples. Imagine the fear. Imagine their not knowing what's going to happen. And then imagine their utter shock when the nightmare reaches them, falls on his feet before Jesus, and shouts out at the top of his lungs, refers to Jesus as the Son of the Most High, and then begs Jesus not to torture him. Imagine the shock, fear, and then shock. When we encounter this story, we're probably like, what in the world? This is a scene out of The Walking Dead. This is like The Exorcist. I mean, this is a very strange story to us. But it was a very strange occurrence to the disciples as well. It was very confusing. It was full of fear. Now, Jesus isn't confused. Jesus knows exactly what's happening. He is fully engaged because Jesus doesn't just see what's on the surface. Jesus sees what's behind the curtain. Jesus sees the real nightmare. And that nightmare is the evil that has ripped this man's heart and mind to shreds. As if the story couldn't get any more confusing to our minds. Let's just be straight, let's just be real. Now, when this all goes down, like I said earlier, Jesus is in a region called the Gerasenes. Now, this particular region was not looked upon with fondness by the Jews of Jesus' day. The fact